Hello, 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 and welcome to Spiritpreneur School, where spirited entrepreneurs connect. I am Abiola Abrams, your sacred bombshell business dean. I just made that up, but I love it. And today we have a really exciting, empowering, and epic session for you. First, I'm going to tell you about our sponsors, and then I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest, and then we're going to get all going. Okay, so we are sponsored today by Cheeked. Cheeked reimagines online dating with a new app that makes misconnections obsolete. Cheeked, that's CHEEKD, uses a cross-platform, low-energy Bluetooth technology, which fosters hyper-local engagement. Now, all of that fancy stuff means that Cheeked is the place to hook up with really cute people who are in your vicinity. The app connects people in real time versus virtual time. Connections begin in person, and Cheeked helps take you to the next step and continue the conversation online. We're also sponsored today by the Sacred Business Academy's Become the Guru Bootcamp. The name says it all. Become the Guru Bootcamp is a 7-week intensive specially designed to position you as a respected guru in your field. Become the Guru Bootcamp is about you achieving guru status as a superstar influencer in your niche so that you can increase your expert status and raise your profile online, build your client and customer base, grow your community and tribe, and make a difference in the world. You can find out about that at sacredbusiness.academy. Now, let me tell you about today's Spiritpreneur School guest. We are in the house with Ms. Lori Cheek, who is usually in New York City by way of the Soho House, but she is broadcasting from Kentucky today. Lori Cheek is the founder and CEO of Cheeked. Prior to launching Cheeked, she worked in architecture, furniture, and design for 15 years for such companies as Christian Dior. Yeah. She has a multitude of different interests, but we know her most prominently from being featured on Shark Tank and her entrepreneurial prowess and lessons, which she brings here with us today. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and broadcasting from Kentucky.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw! Now, Lori, were you recently married? I'm going to get in your business before we begin. Were you married recently?
I never made it down that aisle.
You didn't make it yet. We'll say yet.
Well, not that aisle with the person that I was engaged to. So I was engaged.
Okay. Because I saw, when I was doing my research, I saw a wedding registry.
Oh, interesting. I feel like I need to find that and remove it.
Delete it. I'll tell you afterwards.
I'll still take the gifts.
Well, more excitingly, there is a relaunch in the works of Cheeked. Can you please tell us what Cheeked used to be, what Cheeked is now, and a little bit about that exciting journey, my sister?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was in architecture and design for 15 years, and I had a light bulb moment about 7 years ago. So I was out to dinner with another architect who was a friend, and I'd excused myself from the table, and when I came back, he'd scribbled on the back of his business card, "Want to have dinner?" And he slid that to a woman as we were leaving the restaurant. And I remember looking back thinking, I know he just slid a business card to this girl, but it was someone that he was interested in. He didn't go up and interrupt their conversation with her dining companion. I just thought it was an intriguing way to hand a stranger a note that said, "I want to see you again." But the awkward part of that was that it was his business card that he was using for dating. So I immediately started brainstorming how to take the business out of the business card. And 2 years later, I launched Match.com. I launched Cheek.com, which I was hoping was going to be the next Match.com. Anyway, so you could capture these strangers with a deck of cards, and they said funny things on them, like, "I just put all my drinks on your tab," or there was one that said, "I'm hitting on you." There was one that said, "Act natural, we can get awkward later."
That was my favorite one.
Yeah, that was the favorite in the whole deck. So each card had a unique code. So if I had slipped you a card, you could type in that code on the Cheeked website and find the profile of the person that had slipped you the card. So it was a privacy protected way of handing someone this note for dating, not for business. And yeah, I built that thing for 4 years with all my power and might. I struggled, I hustled, and it was definitely a journey, but I realized at some point that I needed some help. So that's when I took that journey down that hallway of the Shark Tank.
Now, Lori,
that's kind of a longer story, but now I've got this new app. So
yes.
There was this vortex that kind of sent me pivoting my business into this new mobile app where you don't have to slip people cards anymore. The app kind of does the wingman work for you based on this Bluetooth connection. So now anyone in a 30-foot radius that comes near you on a plane or a train, you don't have to have an internet connection or a cellular signal. It just says you just missed a connection with Matt. And then I could open up Matt's profile, and if we both decide to get cheeky, then we can start chatting. So that's the short version.
I love that. So they have to be kind of nearby. So it's not like, can you see the person and then kind of walk away and then send them the little shout out?
Yes, you can. So I think the neat thing about this app, and I use New York City as a perfect example, like in your morning commute, these trains, you see the same people all the time. And in the New York City subway, it's the last place where you're going to get picked up on by someone pretty normal, because people rarely try breaking the ice in the subway. It's just, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's crowded.
It's awkward.
Yes. And most people think you're crazy if you start talking to them in the subway. It happens from time to time, but it's rare. So this way, when you get out of the train, everyone else that was on that app that you passed in the stairwell, that was on the train with you, it could even be a passing train, you'll capture their profile on the Cheeked app, and then you can chat with them later. You can get cheeky with them immediately. And then it even tells you how many times you've crossed that person. So if it's happened 20 times in a month, I think there's something to look at there.
I love this. I think that it sounds to me really cute and a really kind of a more accessible thing than like a Tinder, you know, like it feels like kind of like a fun, flirty way, but you're just taking it digital if you're feeling a little bit shy and you see someone that you kind of like. Is that the feedback you've been getting?
Yes. And, you know, I think the other thing is, like, let's say I'm sitting at dinner with you right now, and the love of my life could be right behind me, and maybe I'm never going to see him. But if he's on the app, I would get a notification right now that I've missed this guy. That means he's right here right now. So this is not online dating. This is not someone that's 100 feet away. This is someone that's here. So he could be sitting at the end of the bar and I don't see him, but the app will alert you that this guy, this hottie, is in the room. And maybe you can say, hey, look at 3 o'clock because there's someone that's interested in you. Or you can say, I'm going to send you a drink. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can break the ice via this app, but it's all about right here, right now. And this is trying to be the what I say, the IRL dating app. So it's the in real life dating app. So this is not swiping in your bed looking for strangers. This is what's around you. So pay attention.
Oh, I love that. So they don't have to, you don't have to have like sent them a little nudge, or that it just automatically tells you whoever's in the room. Like these are all the people who have the app who are in the room.
Yes, and with your filter. So I'm looking for a man between 20 and 80. It'll give me, it'll alert me when they come by.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So people can go download that on their iTunes. It's an iTunes app, or is it
iTunes only right now? But we'll get there with Android. Baby steps.
You will, and I believe you. Let me just tell people, Lori, about your tenacity and your persistence and your courage, which I feel are like the greatest lessons that you have to teach. That when I saw by the time I saw your Shark Tank episode, I already was very familiar with you because as a columnist and as a coach, that the first place where I had my strong footing was in the love and relationship world. That was the first space that I was in. And you had reached out to me a number of times. You were very much on social media, hitting up the people who were in that space, which was awesome. And being like, here's what I've got. Check this out. Here's an event that I had. It seemed like you were always having these great parties and these wonderful things. I had seen your cards in like gift bags or that sort of thing, because you sponsored like a number of events. And so you were establishing what I like to tell my spiritpreneurs to establish, preeminence in your space. And so by the time you came across my TV screen on one of my favorite shows, I was like, yay, there's my girl Lori from Twitter, who's like always, you know, talking about Cheeked and all of the wonderful things that she's been doing. In the beginning, did you plan from the beginning for social media to be a part of your getting the word out about your marketing?
You know, when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. And as I mentioned, I came up with that idea 7 years ago. And I even remember thinking, okay, I'm going to get everybody on Facebook on my Cheeked business with the cards. And at that point, I had like 250 friends. And like, what is that? That's nothing. That's no reach. And I don't even think I had a Twitter handle when we first started out. And we got covered in the New York Times 2.5 months after I launched. And if I had had Twitter, I mean, it was the biggest traffic day of my business before the Shark Tank. I would have done anything to read the stream of the New York Times article, but I didn't even have it back then. So, yeah, I've learned lots of lessons and the power of social media. So I do my own, clearly, and I found you.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's talk about Shark Tank. Can you tell us about the entire Shark Tank experience? Because it's easy for us, you know, people sitting on their sofas to look and be like, oh, well, I would do this and I would do that. But they don't know what they would do if they were standing there in front of, you know, these uber sharks pitching their baby, basically saying, here's my baby, you know, accept my baby. Tell us about your Shark Tank journey.
So for years, everybody kept saying, this is such a perfect product for the Shark Tank. I mean, even before I'd hit a wall with finances. And finally, one year, a girlfriend of mine that I also met on social media that lived in Dallas, Texas, sent me the link. And she said, Lori, apply for the Shark Tank. They're accepting applications. I clicked on the link. I did it right then. I feel like it took 10 minutes. And I'm just like, okay, done.
What were the questions like? Was it like...
It was so long ago, I don't even remember. I think the first time you apply, it's pretty basic information. That was 2.5 years ago, probably. Yeah. Anyway, that was done. I just went about my day. I kind of forgot about it. And then I think a couple months later, I got that phone call from LA. I saw the 310 area code. And whenever I get a call from there, I know it's something exciting. It's like usually TV related or a reality television show wanting to do something about me. So I picked up and they said, hello, this is so-and-so from ABC Shark Tank. I started screaming. I had pretty much forgotten I had done that application. So that was really exciting. And from that point, it took a year until my episode aired, but they said, we're interested in getting a video from you. So I ended up spending a lot of money to get a professional video made, which you don't have to, but if I was going to do this, I wasn't going to do it halfway. Like, I don't do anything halfway. So I made this awesome video. I sent it in.
What was the video?
So, you know, the weird thing is you can't share that video, and it's disappointing because it's really awesome. But it was basically your pitch to the sharks. You were going to tell them how much you'd made. It's pretty much like a 5-minute story of your business and why you're looking for this money and what you're going to do with it. Okay. So, but it was funny. And yeah, it's a shame I still can't share that to this day. But anyway, they ended up calling me back, seems like a month later, and they said, we're going to keep moving forward with you. And they sent me this application again, which seemed like 50 pages. So I had to print out this document, and you had to handwrite every answer with ink. And there's like no eraser mate involved. If you made a mistake, you had to wad it up, reprint the page, and handwrite the whole thing all over again. I mean, that thing took a week. You know, I went into a hole and focused on getting this thing done. So many questions. I didn't even know what a few of the questions meant. And I had to get lawyers involved, talking about trademarks, patents, just partnerships, legalities, if I'd ever been in a lawsuit. I mean, it was insanity. Okay, so then
it sounds like later, the application, Lori, was a business education by itself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got so smart about my business in the end of it. Anybody could ask me anything. So then I made it to the next step, and then you think you're done with this application. So then they send you another 25 pages. I'm like, when is this going to end? And, you know, the funny thing is I had a partner back then who's not my partner anymore. And when I told him I've got this 50-page application for the Shark Tank, he looked at me and said, you know, this is ridiculous, Lori. 50,000 people apply to get on the show. There's no chance you're going to get on there. And I was like, huh?
Oh, he sounds like a
Lori Cheek
person.
I mean, this is one of these lessons I've learned about a partner. You need people around you that say, yes, let's go. Let's do this. And the fact that he said no to helping me do this, I mean, the irony is I made it on the show out of however many applicants there were. So finally he broke down and helped me a little bit with some of it. And I swear that application process just kept coming at me. Every time you thought you were done, you'd have to do more. And then I started practicing the pitch. And through this whole process, they keep telling you, you're not guaranteed to go on this show until you're sitting in front of the television watching yourself on TV. So through all of this, you don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, finally I got that phone call and they were going to book my flights to LA. And I'm like, okay, awesome. But they kept saying, you still don't know. Because they send twice as many people out there to film than actually air. So even when you've gone in front of the sharks, you still don't know if you're going to go on the air or not. So, yeah, it was all very exciting. And I remember flying out there. I've felt like I couldn't speak the 3 days before I was going onto the Shark Tank. I was terrified. And, you know, I've done videos, I've been on the news, and I've done public speaking for the past 5 years. But there was something about walking in front of them that had me almost paralyzed. And I even remember that morning thinking, I've got to do some kind of shots or something, but I've got this Southern accent and I didn't want to sound drunk. So I remember I had a glass of wine and it did not help. Anyway, so it's my turn to walk down this aisle and my heart was beating in my throat. And I was worried the words weren't going to come out of my mouth. And if you see me talking now, if you saw my presentation on the Shark Tank, people were tweeting, the cheeked robot needs to blink or breathe, because I went on autopilot. I don't even remember doing it, but the words came out and I think I was terrified. Anyway, I was just happy that I said the pitch. Like I didn't. Things, yes. Yeah.
And that's where your preparation came in.
Right.
Thankfully you put in.
I didn't have any character in it. It wasn't me, you know, I wasn't funny. I was just like saying the words. And I don't know, I just don't think it looked very good. And people were making fun of me on Twitter, but I'm like, whatever. So
if it was easy, everyone would do it.
That's true. And I just think it's an honor to even get that far. I mean, out of that many people applying, I'm like, this is awesome. And I didn't necessarily think I was going to get an investment from the Sharks because my numbers were pathetic and I didn't care. I wanted to go on that show anyway. There could have been someone in the audience watching. You never know who was going to see my story and my mission and what I was dreaming of doing. So
that Lori, you literally had millions of dollars of advertising, not only for your product, but for you as a brand as well. That, you know, I'm a visual person, you know, as most people are, and you, in the way that you present yourself physically, you know, you have an architectural background. You're with Christian Dior, so obviously you know presentation and branding. And so people pay millions of dollars to advertise in prime time on a major network. That's what you had. You had millions of dollars basically of advertising time, which is amazing. And the show reruns. And so that is wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, I went to South by Southwest right after my episode aired last February. So South by Southwest is in March. Everybody down there was like, you're the cheeked girl. Give me one of those cards. I was on the highway trying to find a pop-up yoga class somewhere. And someone rolled down their window at like 60 miles an hour, yelled out the window, the Sharks were wrong. I mean, he recognized me in Austin, Texas. So yes, there was a lot of personal brand recognition from that show. And this year I was flying down to South by Southwest and my episode has made it onto the back of the seat of the JetBlue Airlines.
That's awesome.
Everybody down there this year was like, I saw you on the plane. And then I flew JetBlue back and I saw myself on the plane. So I was tapping everybody in my row like, that's me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So for people who are watching who don't know, tell them what happened in the room with the sharks after you did your presentation.
Oi.
Oi.
So everything awesome I said, they cut from the show. So I think they take it like they saw it going downhill. So that's the way this episode was going to get run. But basically, I wanted Mark Cuban. He was my #1 target. And I remember saying, I can change the population with this business. And he immediately threw his hands up and said, you're delusional, I'm out. And I felt like a sword had stuck me in the stomach. So then I started looking at the rest of them, and they're all just like, no thanks. And then Kevin O'Leary starts doing his hands like this and starts telling me one of those stories that he starts to tell.
Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, I just knew something horrible was getting ready to come out of his mouth. And I shut my brain down. Like, I could not hear what he was going to say. I felt like I couldn't go forward with this positive energy. So I stopped listening. I zoned out. And there was a moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm on national television. I've got to tune back in. Like, what if he asks me something? Anyway, he threw my cards up in the air. They went everywhere. They cut that from the show, thank goodness. But that was painful. I mean, It's like my kid. He's like throwing up into the air. And then lastly, so Barbara Corcoran, I guess it was kind of spacey at this point. I don't think she realized she was the last one. And I looked her in the eye and I'm like, Barbara, come on, you invest in people. And she said, she told me a story about her flower shop and how I was the right entrepreneur with the wrong idea. And then I realized they were all out and I could not walk off that stage without saying one more thing. So I sat there in silence, staring at them. And finally, I looked them all like this. And I said, trust you will all see me again. And of course, they cut that. But then I turned around and walked off. And I felt sick. And I walked out to my producers. And I said, I hope that was bad enough for television. I didn't care. Like, I still wanted on that show.
Yes.
And you know what? It was bad enough for television. And it's re-aired like 20 times. I get hits from other countries and emails in other languages. So it's all been great since then.
It has been, Lori, because the really awesome thing is that now you have relaunched, you took your brand and you evolved it into, something else, that I say that, being an entrepreneur, spiritpreneur, as I call it, is not necessarily about the launch. It's about the relaunch and the rebound and the evolution of what it is that you're presenting. And so you're getting advertising now when people watch you and they Google and search, oh, Cheeked, they're going to be signing up for your app. And so, Lori, how did you deal with the profound feelings of rejection? That's what stops a lot of entrepreneurs and creative people in their tracks, that fear of, looking foolish, the fear of rejection, and you literally faced that and had the tenacity to keep going. When you got home, how did you deal with that? How did you rebound?
So I remember being kind of depressed after the whole thing. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I still had to wait. I guess it was 4 months after I filmed the thing until the episode aired. Actually, it was almost 6 months. So I couldn't tell anybody what had happened, not a soul. And it was painful because I didn't know what was going to happen after the show aired. And I just was walking around with this big secret of doom and gloom, but I was still going to celebrate national television and everything there was behind that. So I ended up having a huge party the night it aired, February 28th, 2014.
Awesome.
And I invited 500 of my network and best friends, and they all showed up. And I remember they were all like, well, I know you must have gotten a deal if you're having a party. And I'm like, So then we're all watching the segment. I'd never seen how it got chopped together, and it was insane watching it. And then I finally heard what Kevin O'Leary's story was, because, I hadn't listened to it when he was physically telling it to me.
Right.
So we got a record-breaking number of visitors that night, and we had set up our servers not to crash, and I ended up going to bed, and then it hit in LA, which was a few hours earlier. So it was like 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever happened. And then our site crashed when it aired on the West Coast. So that was a bummer, and I wasn't awake to deal with it. But then I woke up in a panic the next day thinking, last night was a Shark Tank. I had to see what had happened overnight in my inbox, my Twitter feed. It was insane. I think it took me a month to get it cleaned up, but 90% of the emails and tweets were all like, you go girl, this idea is awesome. You're ahead of your time. Whatever you do, don't give up. And then 10% were like pure evil trolls, just you're stupid. And I think 90% good is outweighed the
Yes,
10% bad.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because I always say about, internet trolls, like if people are afraid of putting themselves out there, for the tiny percent of people who don't have the guts to put themselves out there, these people are generally anonymous idiots, and this is your real name, your real face, your real life that's out there. And so you can't judge yourself by their opinions. And
somebody even wrote me, and this is this whole thing, like you can be whoever you want on a keyboard. That's the whole thing, even about my dating app. But some guy wrote and said, that bleach in your hair must have gotten into your brain to come up with such a stupid idea. I mean, some of them were so ridiculous. They were laughable. Like,
yeah.
Who says stuff like that? I'm like, thanks.
Well, see, people don't realize when they see someone on TV that they're a real person.
Right.
That this is a person, this is a flesh and blood, heart beating person. But Lori, I have to say that, in doing the research about you, you have always had this kind of get up and go spirit. How did, as soon as you graduated from architecture school, you packed up and came to New York City with nothing. And you said that your business partner said to you, this is ridiculous. You're not going to get on Shark Tank. And your reaction was, I'm Lori Cheek. Where does that come from?
That book my mom always read when I was little, about that train that says, I think I can.
Little engine that could, yes.
So I have always been very stubborn. And I seriously, when I say I don't do anything halfway, I never have. You give me a Scrabble board, I will figure out how to dominate that game. Just anything. And I do think this stubborn characteristic of mine has come in super handy in building this business, because in the end, perseverance is really what makes for a successful entrepreneur in most cases. I mean, stubborn can go in the wrong way sometimes, because there are moments where you need to realize when to quit or when to pivot, and
no one to hold them, no one to fold them.
Yes. So I don't know. I've always said everything I've been through, most people would have quit years ago when I had this card business. I ran out of money. I ended up selling my Dior wardrobe. I sold my electronics, and I was doing all this crazy stuff to raise money. I rented my apartment out on Airbnb for 14 months, and I ran my business and my life out of a suitcase, sleeping with all my friends, and when they were out of town. So luckily I had this keychain that looked like I was a super. So every time one of my friends would go out of town, I was in their apartment. So yeah, I just don't think a lot of people would have put their life in that kind of dire straits to keep a business going. And then even after the Shark Tank, getting brutally eaten alive on national television, there was something about that fueled me to prove them wrong and to keep working harder. So call me crazy, but it's all going to lead to something one day.
It is. It absolutely is. And as I say all the time, being creating your own path and making your own rules, being an entrepreneur may sound sexy, but it's not for the weak of heart at all. Not for the weak of heart. What would you do differently if you were starting your journey from scratch with Cheeked?
So, I walked in circles with this idea, thinking I'm going to make it happen, but I really didn't know how to start a business. I mean, I was an architect, no idea what I was doing. And I was out to a Mardi Gras party one night where I met these two guys and told them my idea. And they ended up saying, it's a great idea. We help people start businesses. So why don't we sit down with you at the Soho House and we can talk about getting on board and helping you bring this to life. So we met that following Monday morning, and they became my partners from the very beginning. And ultimately, these two guys both were business development background guys, and I didn't need two people with the same skill sets. And I didn't know I didn't need that. I thought the more the people helping promote this thing. Anyway, I just think the one thing I would have done differently was getting the right board on, I mean, the right team on board. And that would have included someone with a technology background, because in the end, my website was the disaster of my business. I just kept getting bamboozled by web developers, and that's where all my money ended up going. So if I had just had someone internally to help me build the site and make all the technology work behind it, I wouldn't have gone through half of what I've gone through. But in the end, I've learned so much from all these mistakes, and now it's almost like I'm starting a new business, and now I know what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes. You have a technology related question coming in, Lori, and people, you can ask your questions by clicking the blue Q&A button if you are watching this live on the viewing page. This question is from Marvin S. And Marvin says, are apps the most lucrative way to start an online business? Everyone seems to start an app first.
I definitely think that's the direction of where we're going anymore. I mean, I really think in the future that, you know, desktops are going to be a thing of the past, and our cell phones are so mobile. I mean, you can do everything with them at this point. And yeah, I mean, mobile apps are the way of the future. With Beacon's technology, you can walk by a store and it's going to tell you, oh, hey, come in here, we've got free ice cream. I mean, it's just, it's where we're all going. So yes, I definitely think mobile is the way to go when starting a business.
Now, one of the things, Lori, that I thought was really interesting in your story is that you, even though, you know, you sold your wardrobe, which when I heard that, we're the same age, so I relate to you a lot. I was watching and you're like, I sold my Christian Dior wardrobe. I was like, oh my God. But one of the things that was really interesting is that although you were, you know, basically kind of homeless, you know, living on your friends' sofas, that you were wise enough to feel like, okay, I'm going to invest in a Soho House membership so that I could be around the right people. And people always talk about, you know, they say it's who you know. And then I say, well, go get to know some people. People say that and then use that as a way to prevent themselves, you know, to count themselves out. Can you share with us what the thinking was behind that?
So when I had my full-time career, when I was making almost 120K a year, I was a member of the Soho House. And then I took this entrepreneurial leap, and I still had my savings to kind of pay that yearly fee. And then when I left my full-time job, the Soho House kind of became where I started working and making these connections. So it's where I spent my days. And then when I hit that wall and went homeless for a while, it was the one luxury I wasn't going to give up. I mean, that place it's so glamorous. I mean, you feel like you're walking into a London.
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's just super chic. So, you know, I'm like living on sofas and showering at the gyms, and that was just the one place I was not going to give up no matter what. So I've been very creative about how to keep funding all of this. And whether I've been walking dogs, watering plants, I've cleaned apartments, I've done everything. So part of all that money that I've made in a creative way has gone towards my membership. I'm still a member.
You're still a member. Yay.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to someone who is, maybe they have an idea and they have a great job and they're afraid, they have the golden handcuffs, they're afraid to leave their job, they don't know when to quit their job and start their venture? Can you give some advice about that?
I would say you should be scared, because it's scary. And, you know, there was just something about me, I know myself very well, and I knew somehow I could make this happen. And I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, and I used to make jewelry and sell it in stores. I had a company called Designs by Roxy, and I was just, this is while I was in college. And I just think if you don't believe in yourself enough, or the idea that you have, or have the right people around you, I wouldn't recommend going out there and leaving your job. Like, you need to have everything kind of lined up before you make that leap, or some serious money or funding behind you, because it's not easy.
Did you create a savings plan before you left? Like, okay, I'm going to save up X amount of months or X amount of years before I quit my job?
No. You know, when I was working full-time still, I was working on Cheat full-time too. So I felt like I was cheating on my employer in a way. Like I would bring my laptop into work and put it in front of their huge Mac that they had for me. And they were always like, why are you bringing that little MacBook in here when you have this huge screen to work on? I'm like, oh, because all my contacts are on here from my last job. It's just a lot easier. Anyway, you know, there was some guilt involved in that. But as an entrepreneur, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. This is like I've given birth to an invention and I'm not going to do this halfway. But then I realized I was barely even working and I just couldn't keep going. I had to figure out if this was going to be my future or not. So I did it. I mean, I had gotten a call from Oprah Winfrey's studio at one point wanting a deck of these cards. And I thought, I've got gold in my hands. There's something here. So I left, and that was, I guess, almost 5 years ago.
I remember reading about the Oprah people calling you and doing a pre-interview. Maybe you should send them some information about your new app. Tell us your Oprah story. Yes. Tell us your, she loves a comeback story. Tell us your Oprah journey, your Oprah story.
Well, it's not that long because they had written me an email and wanted me to call. So I called and spoke to one of the producers, and I sent them a deck of cheat cards, and then we had a quick interview. I sent them a headshot, and she checked in with me with a few follow-up questions, and then nothing ever happened. But, you know, they're looking for great stories all the time. So I think there's a very slim chance that you get on Oprah. And I remember I cried. Like I forwarded that email to my mom and I called her. I'm like, you gotta check your email. I can't believe this. But, you know, that was 3 months in. I was delusional for sure back then, thinking I was going to be a millionaire because Oprah had called me. Because, you know, when you have that Oprah moment, you're golden. So
yes. Well, the cool thing about that, I think that people can take away from that is that I think that it's really important to just put yourself out there. Because one of the things that I've realized when people ask me, how have you been on all these TV shows or whatever, is that what I tell people is that TV producers, the way that a lot of them find people when it's not by referral or your manager or whoever, it's by Googling. So they Google, they search, you know, whatever lifestyle expert, or they look at, you know, the indie press. So they watch this show. So somebody could be Googling and watch this show and be like, look at her, she's interesting. Let's book her for this. And so you want to just put yourself out there rather than just sitting home worried and afraid. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I take every advantage to speak in front of anything. I mean, it could be 10 people in a room. I say yes. I mean, unless I've got something bigger going on, I say yes to everything pretty much within reason. Yes. And I'll travel around New York City, pitching, speaking. I've done a TEDx talk, which I was super nervous about. But yeah, I just think the more you do, the more chances you have. You don't know who you're talking to or who you're going to meet on your journey there.
Now, how does business planning work for you, Lori? Do you use a business plan or mind maps or any goal-oriented systems?
I have not really used anything very structured like that. I would say my iCalendar is pretty much as far as a goal tracker as I get, but I'm very meticulous with this calendar. So if something's meant to be done by next Friday, it is on my calendar and it gets done.
That's awesome. So you're not a person that gets bogged down, it sounds like, in procrastination or, you know, some of those self-sabotage things that can come up?
No, you know, building this business for this long, you kind of can't play that game. Yeah, the procrastination game.
I was interviewing the phenomenal Kathy Cano Murillo. She is a crafts expert. Her stuff is sold in Michael's, etc. And she said, I don't have time to procrastinate.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Which I love as well. Now, tell us about, because, you know, you mentioned the creative ways that you have been funding your business, and you've been kind of doing, I remember once, like a few years ago, that my mom, I got very upset at her, this is about 8 years ago, that she told a family member, she's like, yeah, she's doing odd jobs. And I was like, Mommy, don't tell people. Like, I was like, I felt like it sounded like I was like a grifter, like, you know, or something. Can you share with us some of the ways that you've been funding your business?
Yeah, you know, I'm actually super proud of what I've done and the ways that I would rather be doing this stuff because I'm ultimately working for myself. But I think the best way to make money is doing focus groups. So 3 times a day I get on Craigslist and I do a search for focus groups, research studies, app test. There's like 20 search terms that I look for, and I look for it under jobs, and then I look for it under gigs. And sometimes you can go get paid $300 in an hour to give your feedback on a credit card, for example. So that's better money than I was making per hour when I had a real job. And then I enter to win tons of contests. I do lots of Instagram contests, Twitter contests, and I win so many electronics, and I sell them on Amazon.com for the most part, unless it's something that I need. Yeah, I mentioned I did the Airbnb thing, and now I'm not doing that anymore, but I manage a friend's Airbnb listing. So when he's out of town, I get the keys to the person. I go put the milk in the water and water his plants, get his mail. So I get paid to do stuff like that. But yeah, I'm doing site testing, app testing. I've walked dogs, I've house sat.
That's awesome. I love that.
I'm selling my clothes.
I really wanted you to share that, Lori, because a lot of people, use all of these obstacles as ways to, rather than looking at them as opportunities, as ways to count themselves out before even entering the arena. What is your North Star? What guides you and keeps you going when things get tough?
I mean, this is like, I always compare having a business to like having a child, which you kind of said earlier, but it's like I gave birth to this invention 5 years ago, and now I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and I will do anything. I do not need a Christian Dior wardrobe. I do not need these electronics that I win. And I know what I need, and what I want in life is to build this dream. Like, I do not want to go back and ever have a full-time job. This is what I want to do with my life, and I feel like I'm living a dream doing it. And I don't care if I go out to dinners that are $120. I spend a lot of time at the gym, and I cook healthy, and I go to happy hour with my friends. I'm very social. There's tons of meetups and networking events and I get to go to the Soho House, which is awesome, but that's just a super perk. I don't know. I just think my life has never been better. And I know some people look at me like, how on earth is she surviving? And it's just all about being creative. And I don't know if my background in architecture has helped me with that, but I'm happy where I am.
I think that it is, to me, when I look at you, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Yes. And you're creating your own American dream, which is beautiful. Is there a book in the works, Lori? Because I feel like you have such a great story to tell that's still evolving.
It all the time. If I had more time, there is such a book. I mean, this is movie quality. The stuff I have been through, I mean, I know every single one of my best friends would never go through this. And I know they understand, but there was something about, I had that light bulb moment, and I've had light bulb moments before, but they weren't this strong. This was something I could not stop thinking about, and I had to make it happen. But, in the end of all of this, I have a new partner now that has funded the new technology behind the new Cheeked. So I'm not struggling as much as I was before. I'm not getting paid either, but I have money behind this technology and this app, which is going to be pretty killer. It just got released from the Apple Store, a lot of the fixes today. So it's a very exciting day for us.
Oh, woohoo! So this is a great day.
Yes.
So Lori, in making your presentation for funding with this new partner versus making your presentation with Shark Tank, tell us about how you were able to get funding from this new partner.
So this partner had done a little coding on my old website about 4 years ago, and he ended up being a serial entrepreneur and somehow made it really big along the journey, the parallel journey of mine. And before I went out to film the Shark Tank, he came and met me at the Soho House for lunch one day. And he said, you know what, I've been watching you, and I really believe in Cheeked, and I want to get involved. And I was like, thank God. So he ended up buying out my old partners, and so he owns their equity now, and he had the money to put towards this new app. And we hired the hottest app developers in New York City, and they're the one that's, helped me bring this dream to life in a newly launched way. So I didn't really have to go present. I think he'd just been watching me for years, and he knows that if I've got magic in my hands, what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to run, and I'm going to run hard.
That is awesome. And that is what you are doing. So before we close, Lori, is there advice that if someone is watching this and she's like, oh, wow, okay, Lori's knocking out all my excuses. I would have said it's who you know, but she knocked that out. I would have said, well, you've got to have money, but she took away that excuse. What is your advice for someone who is watching this, who has a dream, has an idea, has something in their heart that they would like to create?
I mean, I always say, if you believe in your idea to the level that I believed in my idea, you get a talented team around you that you trust and believes in your idea as much as you do. I think that's the first most important thing that you do. You give up doubt, you give up excuses, and you bulldoze forward and don't look back.
Wonderful. And the cool thing is that now Shark Tank, with their show After the Tank, they are showing updates on people who didn't get deals as well. So it'll be cool.
I'm dying to get on that show.
Yes. Did you send them your stuff?
Not yet. I want to get this app up and working and enough users, so it will be an interesting story. But, I didn't say trust you all, see me again for nothing.
Yes. Well, you are awesome, Lori, and I look forward to definitely seeing you again. And I've got to get the app on my phone.
Yes, you do. You have an iPhone there. I see that.
Yes. So everyone, go to your app store, download the Cheeked app, tell your friends, tell people that, maybe are not even your friends, but people you want to meet and want to get to know. And where can people find you, Lori, and just participate in all of the magic that you are making in the world?
So you can find us on cheek.com. You can write us an email through our website, or you can find me on Twitter at Lori Cheek NYC. That's LORICHEEK NYC.
You are rocking it, my sister. So thank you so much again for this conversation. And thank you for watching, my Spiritpreneur friend, and continue to dream bigger and love yourself. And I will see you out in the universe.